After coming out and talking about things that have happened in my life, things have gotten so much easier after the stress of holding everything in was taken off.
Find and learn from people who lived it wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from people who lived it.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, hi there, it's Matthew Blades, and I am delighted you are here for another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. Before I go any further, I'm being told by friends of mine that I need to do a better job of asking you to please rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. It is much appreciated. Let's jump into today's episode with Jill and Elsa. This is the first time we've ever sat down with a teenager, and she is one impressive teenager. Her mom told me that Elsa has been through hell and back over the last 5 years, and we're about to find out why. So welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It with Jill and Elsa.
Hi, I'm Elsa, and I'm 17.
Elsa, what story are you here to share today?
I'm here to share that it's okay to not be okay.
Who do you hope hears this?
I hope who hears this is anyone really of any age, but mainly members of the LGBTQ community, teenagers, people that have gone through the same thing I've gone through and just feel alone and lost.
It's a tough road as a kid these days. It's a thought that a lot of adults seem to have. Hi there, I'm Matthew Blades, and welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. This is the first time we've ever had a 17-year-old on the show, and I'm excited that it's you, Elsa. So first up, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. Mom is right beside her, lest anybody be wondering what's going on here. Hi, Jill. How are you?
I am great.
Yeah, I bet you are. Well, there's going to be a lot of things that we tackle in this episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. As you heard Elsa say on the onset, she is a 17-year-old teenager. She is a member of the LGBTQ community. She was mentally abused by an alcoholic father. She has a body dysmorphia that she'd like to talk about. And she also wants to really impress upon people that idea that we keep hearing more and more about, which is it's okay to not be okay. But I think it's worth diving in and figuring out exactly, what does that statement mean? So we're going to get into all of that. What we want to start this series of podcasts with, Elsa, is how are things now?
After coming out and talking about things that have happened in my life, things have gotten so much easier after the stress of holding everything in was taken off.
I believe that that's a thing. It is. It weighs on you, and you're just kind of sitting there feeling like as soon as I mention this, it's all going to change. But in your head, you probably thought it was going to change for the worst, but that did not happen, did it?
No, it didn't.
Yeah, go into detail there. I mean, what has happened that's positive for you since coming out, since starting to create social media videos around it's okay to not be okay? What kinds of things have started to happen to you?
Yeah, of course. Well, to start, after I came out and started talking about my dad before, I felt really scared. Like people are going to judge me. People are going to find out that I went through this. But that didn't happen. I posted a video about it, and it was one of the first videos I had ever posted about me coming out and the trauma that I went through. And it ended up blowing up with 2.7 million views. And I was flooded with DMs of people that are going through or have been through the same thing and just feel stuck where they are.
Isn't it a scary thing, Elsa? And Jill, I'm going to bring you in a second to talk about this, but it's a scary thing to want to bring up things about your parents, right? And about the way you were brought up and about things that happened to you, because you can kind of sit there and feel like, oh my God, I'm going to be bagging on my parents and I'm going to be talking all this, and did you feel a little bit of that anxiety before you made that video and opened up your mouth about what's happened?
Oh, of course. I was terrified. I mean, my dad has a job. My dad is a person. Now that he's sober, he is here for me. But during that time where he wasn't, I didn't know what was going to happen. Is he going to get mad at me and yell at me like he did before? Like, it's just the not knowing that is terrifying.
Yeah. And so, Jill, I want to bring you in. And I mean, now you know more because you guys have obviously gone through this for a little while. But I mean, the first time that she came to you and she was like, Mom, I got to unload this stuff. I'm going to guess, like most parents, you just kind of sat there stunned for a second.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't so much an overnight thing with us. Her father and I are divorced and had been. And because of her age, when all of this started, she didn't necessarily have the vocabulary or the comprehension of what was happening to communicate it to me appropriately so that I could then do something. It wasn't until the night quarantine hit and we had to call 911. Well, she had to call 911 and I went over there to pick her and her brother up from his house. And that's, I think, kind of the moment that all of our earths shifted because I saw firsthand what she had kind of poorly been explaining for her age. And that night we stayed up, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours, so like 3, 4 in the morning. And that's when she kind of let the floodgates open. And now I had context and now I understood. And I had to kind of deal with, my own feelings on all of that, which was difficult.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how difficult it was because you're sitting there and it's really easy as just a human being, right, Elsa and Jill? It's just easy as a human being to sit there and hear this kind of stuff and take it really personally and just feel crappy for it and all of the emotions and things that come with that. But, I think what you're learning is that all of us experience events in our lives. All of us experience turmoil and tough stuff and moments that aren't our favorites. And it's the weight that we give those moments. It's the beliefs, the systems that get set up in us when those things take place that really matters. And so if you're able to really own the story in a way that's powerful, you can actually, and it sounds like to me, the way I'm picking up on this already, you both are in a pretty good place about talking about this now. You're not mincing words. You're not stuttering when you say, he's an alcoholic father, right? Like you're confident about it now, and you're speaking about it from a pretty good place. And I think that's really cool. But I know it didn't start that way. Elsa, I want to come back to you and press you just a little bit further on your father. And when some of this stuff was happening, and obviously you get to an episode where you have to dial 911. Clearly something kind of scary is starting to happen in that moment. You clearly had moments where you were angry at your father, and you still might be. But what's it like to work on that as a teenager?
I mean, I think like any event in a teenager's life, it's definitely hard with especially all the hormones and social media. It feels abnormal because everybody's lives you see are through social media. And with that, most people aren't real and don't share what's actually happening. So all you see is the good stuff. So you're sitting here thinking, well, their life is so good. How come their dad is so amazing? Maybe this is just who my dad is. And you definitely go through a period of darkness where you just feel lost, abnormal, and alone. But as soon as I posted that TikTok and told people they can reach out to me, it was insane, the amount of people, and I didn't feel alone anymore. And I think that was the biggest step in recovery from what happened, is to share it and to show people that they're not alone and life is not perfect for everybody. Because before that, if you look at my videos, it seems like I'm just a regular run-of-the-mill teenager with a normal life. And it was much darker than that.
Yeah. Well, and same goes for you, right, Jill? Like what happened to you is also happened to plenty of people. Plenty of people have gone through a divorce. They've had an alcoholic ex-husband. They've had a teenager who's come out as lesbian or gay. I mean, your story in and of itself, right? It needed support. You probably needed to feel like you weren't alone.
For sure. I mean, I think having been a teacher for so long, that equipped me with a good set of tools on how to kind of tackle this. And I keep thinking, listening to you guys talk, do you remember the movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was my all-time favorite kid movie. And people are like, why? I said, because for once they made it okay to be sad, that it was just as important to feel sad as it is to feel happy. And I took that approach with her. Like, it's okay. You have every right to your feelings. And how anyone else feels is not your responsibility. And, recovery and getting, quote unquote, getting over something like this there isn't an end point. It ebbs and flows, it comes and goes. And we just work together on communicating. And no, we don't always do it well, but, that openness is there so that if things pop up, she knows she can come to me and talk about it.
Yeah, gosh, you're lucky, Elsa. I mean, really, to get that kind of messaging as a teenager that you're not responsible for adults' feelings, which is such a truth, that must have lifted a weight off your shoulders.
Oh, definitely. I still feel, as with a lot of kids that are abused, guilt and shame for not wanting to be around as much. Of course, he understands now, but I still feel guilty because for so long, I was the parent of the household. I was the one who got my brother dressed and ready. I had to wake up my father and made sure he was ready to take us to school. So there's definitely still parental guilt coming from a child, but having that outlet of I'm not responsible. And I just have to keep saying it. I'm not responsible of his feelings. His actions are not my fault. And it's still something that I struggle with.
Also, what are some of your tools that other teenagers might be able to steal that you use when, you're going through, like, let's just be real. Like, you're having a day where you're really pissed off at your dad for something that happened. And they're like, what are your tools to kind of cycle through some of that now?
I would say art, the stage. The stage is a huge outlet for me. I love theater, and I definitely have used that as an outlet for me because when I'm on stage, I'm not Elsa. I'm a different person with a different background, with different parents, a different life. I'm not me. It's an escape from myself, and that really can help me have an outwards look into my life, standing in someone else's shoes when I'm still myself, but on the stage, I'm not myself, that's been a really big outlet for me.
I love that. We just had a few people recently on the podcast suggest that art has been something for them that was a big time creative outlet, including a big, tough military guy who now just paints and, it helps him. It helps him tremendously. And I love that you love to get on the stage. You were given the title of Miss Teen Phoenix.
Yes.
And you're like the farthest thing from a pageant girl, according to your mom.
Yes.
So, how did that come to be? And then here's the other question I want you to answer is, what do you hope to do with it?
My story is very unlike what usually happens. What usually happens at least for the USOA pageants, is you'll send in an audition video for city titles. And then from there, the director will pick you. But for me, I had Miss Arizona come into my place of work and we kind of just chit-chatted about the stage. That's a big part of my life. I love it. And she was basically like, well, what do you think about pageants? How does being Miss Teen Phoenix, how does that sound to you? And I was like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. But to me, I never thought that, that's not me. Those girls are pretty. Those girls are skinny. That's not me. And then I ended up talking to the director, and now that is me. I'm not quote unquote super skinny or model type or the pageant girl, but it doesn't matter. This title is mine. I am Miss Teen Phoenix.
I like it. What are you going to do with it?
I mean, being with the pageant organization I am has definitely helped. The USOA pageants aren't the type to just focus on body image, which is very important to me. But with that, I can spread that information of toddlers and tiaras is not actually what this is like. And I can volunteer so much more. On the 24th, I'm going to be volunteering at the Amanda Hope Rainbow Angels Foundation, which is kids with cancer. They hold a gala every year. I'll be able to do that. And it's really important to give back to the community that has shaped me to be who I am today.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about a few of these things that we've grazed over. And really, I want to bring everything back to reducing stigma, because I think as far as I can tell, Elsa, that's really one of the things that you have the power to help shift and moving forward is you can be helpful in shattering stigmas that come with all of the things, from being a lesbian to having an alcoholic father to having some body dysmorphia issues, which you and I have talked about previous to hitting the record button. And you've already touched on it twice about the body thing. And so let's start with the stigma surrounding body dysmorphia. Can you help us understand what that means, really? And I know, and maybe and maybe Jill knows, but let's just sort of summarize it for somebody who's heard the words before but isn't really sure what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. So body dysmorphia is pretty much a spectrum. It can be different for everybody. But for me, what it is when I look in the mirror, I don't see who I actually am. To me, my stomach looks way different than what it actually looks like to other people. My brain is quite literally morphing my body in my eyes, which is very trippy to think about.
Jill, what do those words mean for you?
I think it hit really close to home as far as, feeling inadequate as a parent, because I don't know any girls or women that wake up every day and look at themselves in the mirror and go, man, I look fantastic. We definitely focus in on the negatives. When she started being open with me about it, I taught her a trick that I learned a few years ago myself, which was take pictures of yourself and then walk away from the mirror. And now that has really helped her, where she can take pictures as she's trying on ball gowns and she feels confident. She feels as beautiful as everyone else thinks she is by just doing something that simple. So it's been challenging, I think, to try to find the right ways to encourage her and help her, plus made me really aware of the language that I use about my own body in the house.
Yeah. So do you think that growing up, you used messaging that you wish you wouldn't have? Like
around her?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was super, what is the word? I guess aware. I mean, my own father's had multiple plastic surgery procedures and used to call us little piggies if we were eating carbs growing up. So wow. I knew for a fact, like, I didn't want to do that to her. So I was careful, but I recognize I wasn't maybe as careful as I should have been. I maybe, going to try on clothes. I never did that with her. And that alone communicates a message. Maybe you don't say the wrong thing, but by not saying anything at all, that also communicates.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to say. I'm glad you said that. Here's a question that I want to ask both of you, which is like, as a parent, Elsa, if my kid came to me and was like, I don't feel beautiful, I'd be like, that's crazy. You're beautiful. Like, I don't get it. Right. Like you're stunning to me. You're perfect to me. And I'm sure your mom fed you all of those same anecdotes, but my guess is when you suffer from body dysmorphia, you can't hear it. Like you can't accept it as a truth. Is that right?
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly right. I personally got to the point where every time I went by the bathroom, I had to step on the scale. If it was above a certain weight, I would break down. And I did it alone until that night where I called her crying and she told me to call the police on my father. And then I opened up about everything and just kind of let it all vomit out. And we got rid of the scale. We had very important talks that I'm never going to look like these people. And that's not in a bad light. It's true. I'm not going to look like these people. I'm not Kim Kardashian. I'm Elsa Reed. I'm not going to look like her because I'm not her. But as of right now, I am finally at a point where I can look at myself in the mirror and think that I'm beautiful, which has never happened to me. I mean, since I started puberty, younger than that, I didn't really care. I mean, you're kind of not self-aware at 8 years old, but then once things started developing, I came aware of myself. All I had was hatred for my body. So for the first time, I've seen myself as beautiful. I love the pictures of myself, which sounds selfish, but I think I'm allowed to be sometimes, especially with the way you look. Like,
yeah, I have a saying, and it goes like this, Elsa: being selfish is the only way we ever get the best version of you. So you lean into that. You lean into that, and you keep filling your bucket. It's important. Let's talk about the stigma surrounding this idea that it's okay not to be okay. And I love that we're starting to use that expression some more. I think folks are figuring it out. I'm impressed by, younger people stepping up and saying, something isn't right here. And it's more than just me being a teenager. What was like maybe the first couple of times that you remember feeling that feeling of like, gosh, I'm not okay. Things aren't right.
I mean, the anxiety didn't just start with my dad. I mean, my pediatrician, when I was a toddler, called me, what did she say? A high-strung toddler?
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been with me. However, the moment I noticed something just wasn't right is when I just couldn't get up. And that is not just a depression thing. It's not just a teenager thing. I could not get up. I wanted to sleep. My room was a disaster. I didn't change my clothes. I didn't shower. I didn't brush my teeth. And there's a lot of stigma that's just teenagers. It's just hormones, but it's not. That's not healthy. It's not normal. Mm-hmm. And so I talked about it and I got help and I'm so much better and I can get out of the house and do things that make me feel happy.
How did you react during that time, Jill?
Well, I mean, prior to the infamous phone call night, we had been on a 50-50 custody split where it was like every other week I had the kids. Since that, Elsa has stayed with me full time. So I kind of felt like, okay, now I can get a better idea of what's going on. And I should add, the night of that phone call was the night before quarantine hit the Valley.
It was also the night after my birthday.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had a lot of time together to talk about things. I noticed her kind of anxiety behaviors when she was very little, almost OCD-like in these rituals, even as a 3-year-old and saying goodnight. How many times you had to give her a kiss? How many, in what order did we do things? And it was always on my radar. And at that point, I think the next day I called the pediatrician, who we have a great relationship with. And I was like, she needs help and she needs help now. I recognize this is a problem, and her not getting up and wanting to shower. I think it's important for parents to know you're not going to punish depression out of a child. You are not going to punish body dysmorphia out of a kid.
Oh God, say it louder, Jill.
Right. And when people say it's okay to not be okay from a parental perspective, what that means to me is quit trying to change the fundamental genetics of the way your child is built. Help them work with it. So I didn't yell and scream. Yeah, I mean, she still had responsibilities. I didn't just let her do whatever she wanted, but I knew I had to be very gentle and understanding. And I bore the brunt of figuring out how best to help her. I didn't want her to have to take that on. And I didn't want her to have to fight for her right to feel the way she wanted to feel. I'm a big fan of everybody gets to have time to be depressed. That is okay. You've been through this huge traumatic event. None of us are okay. You want to sleep for 2 days. I'll support that. But then we need a plan and we need to figure out how we're going to get ourselves out of it.
I'm going to be honest, Elsa. I think you really you kind of hit the parent jackpot to have, you know what I mean? To to take on what you've taken on. Your story reminds me a lot of in my second episode of series 2 is with this guy named Ryan Pinney. And Ryan Pinney was a former military guy who used to love to ride bikes, and he was riding a bike one day in a race and he became paralyzed from the waist down. And his life changed, forever, right? But here's the thing. His mom growing up was so unbelievably spectacular at making the most difficult things almost enjoyable, fun, a game, right? Like they didn't have enough money to pay the bills, so they couldn't turn the electricity on. So dinner by candlelight became a thing. And even when they had electricity, they would cut out all the lights and light the candles because she made it so much fun. Yeah. He was really able to lean into that when it got difficult after losing his ability to walk. It all stemmed back to the training that he had gotten from his mom about, even in these tough moments, here's how we're going to deal with it. Here's how we're going to cycle through it. And we're going to do this thing together. So, I mean, hats off to both of you guys for creating a space, because it could be really easy to get pretty pissy with each other and fight a lot,
Yeah. I mean, there's difficult conversations because she is still 17. She has these issues that aren't going to just go away no matter, like, there is no magic pill that's going to fix it.
Right.
So, I mean, just the other night, and I learned a lot of times she's going to get really mad and yell and scream about problem A. But I know problem A really isn't what's bugging her. And so what I have to do is hang in there with her and battle it out. And sometimes it takes 2 hours to actually get to what's really bothering her. And I'm trying to help her tap into that on her own. Because to me, it seems like the most important job we have as parents is teaching our kids how to be resourceful, how to be intuitive and self-reflective,
right,
and to speak up for themselves.
Yeah, I definitely think my mom has taught me how to stand up for myself. With having an extreme anxiety disorder, that has been a big struggle of mine. But the one like specific memory I know of me for standing up for myself is I was at the dinner table with my dad, and I can't really remember what we were talking about, but it was after the phone call night. And he was just drilling me like, why aren't you coming over and things like this? I said, sorry. So I told him, if I throw a glass plate on the ground and I say sorry to it, it's not going to fix itself. Even if I glue it back together and little pieces perfectly fit back together, it's not the same. You still broke the plate. I mean, that's the first time I really stood up for myself. And I think that really put into perspective for him that you said sorry, but it didn't fix it.
Because it won't, right? It doesn't fix anything that's happened. Actions are what fix it. And I picked up on some of the language from you guys that potentially he's tried a lot harder, and maybe even things are in a very different place now than they were, when this whole thing happened. But let's go back to stigma, because there's a couple of other things that, that triggered you along the way. You mentioned the alcoholic dad, but coming out as a teenager, and kind of stepping into that space, there still is, and I think the world is getting a lot better. And I know we still have so far to go. I do. I know we have so far to go, but it does feel like it's a little easier than it would have been for your own mother to come out when she was 17.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but let's talk a little bit about the stigma surrounding that, because by coming out, you were worried that people would think what?
Oh God, so many things. I mean, I definitely had people judge me, but I think it's more from a religious standpoint. I mean, my grandparents were very religious, and I know a lot of people still think that being gay is wrong because God says so. That was one of my biggest fears, because I do have friends that are religious, and I know if they're real friends, they won't do that. I was also afraid people won't believe me, which was actually true. A lot of people did not believe me. Of course, now that I have a girlfriend, people are starting to believe me, but there's a stigma that lesbians tend to dress more masculine. And a lot of the times, if they don't dress masculine, you're not believed, which hurts and it sucks because you get men texting you all the time. I have grown men still texting me like, oh, you're too pretty to be lesbian. Like, you dress too girly to be lesbian. You're just wanting attention, things like that. And
you'd be shocked at what grown men will send a minor on social media.
Yeah, and it's always targeted to me being lesbian. And being gay is a spectrum. No matter how you dress, the way you act, the way your face looks, the disabilities you have. If you say that you're lesbian, and I have no reason to believe that you're not.
It's not up for debate.
It's not up for debate.
Yeah, right. Well, and it doesn't, I don't know, my whole feeling with people that have come out has always been like, I don't know, it doesn't change anything about you.
Exactly.
You know, we talked about this right at the beginning of our podcast, Elsa, that my goal is to help people feel less alone and encourage them to talk about it. With regard to your depression and your anxiety, in what ways would you want people to talk about it? In what ways did you need to talk about it?
It's definitely different for everybody. My dad wanted me to go to group therapy with him. That was not for me. Did not work. But for some people, it might work. Honestly, just find people you trust and people that love you and take your time. You do not need to talk about it right away. If something happened to you, I tell this to my friends all the time. If I notice they're upset, I'll tell them I'm here for you when you're ready to talk about it. There's a lot of stigma around, okay, let's talk about it, but let's talk about it right now while it's on your mind. Let's go. But you don't need to do that. Talk about it when you're ready to talk about it, when you're feeling emotionally okay to talk about it. And do it with someone you love and trust first before anything else.
Keep trying.
Keep trying. Yeah, if I didn't talk to my mom before I posted on social media, I'm sure I would have posted about it completely wrong because I didn't have the time to really think through what actually happened to me. I mean, for those 5 years, I didn't even know I was being abused. You normally don't when it's your parent.
I want to ask you the same question, Jill. I mean, as a parent, how could other parents do a great job supporting a son or a daughter who's really cycling through some difficult emotions?
I think you have to have the mindset of you're not going to fix them because they're not broken. They're a human being that is going through something. My sister suffered from bipolar and she committed suicide. She gave up. And I think parents need to understand that helping a child through traumatic events or depression or whatever, there isn't a one size fits all thing. And so if the one medicine doesn't work or the one therapist didn't work out, then you just give up. I don't even know how many different branches of psychology. There's all sorts of different avenues that you can take. And I think it's our job as a parents to help children understand that so that if one method doesn't actually make them feel better, it's not because they failed or their parent failed. It just wasn't right. And you have to keep trying, even if it takes 20 years. You just got to keep going.
I love it. I've had a smile on my face the whole hour we've been talking. You're just impressive people. And I'm really happy that you're owning this story, Elsa, and more. And then let me add on that. I'm so happy that you have a supportive mom who's got your back. And there's a lot of kids who don't have that. There's a lot of kids who are dealing with this 100% by themselves. Yeah. And it's awesome that you guys are a little duo.
Yeah, I'm definitely very lucky when it comes to the mom department.
She feels the same, trust me. She feels the same, trust me. Is there anything we haven't hit on that you guys want to make sure you mention before we close up shop?
Yeah, I mean, just to sum it up, be who you are, feel what you're feeling. It's okay to have these emotions and cry. It's okay if you're abused. Obviously, it's not okay what happened, but stuff happens. It's not your fault. Adults' feelings aren't your fault. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be gay. Yeah.
Okay, super. Jill, Elsa, thank you so much for spending some time with me today on Learn from People Who Lived It. I think so many folks have. My prayer is like that question I asked you up front, like, who do you hope hears this? I hope there are moms and daughters sitting down together right now listening to this podcast. And then once it's wrapped up, they have an opportunity to really jump into the deep end and help each other out, just like you two have.
Yeah, I mean, my mom's my best friend, and it's very important to me that we have the relationship that we do. Even if saying my mom's my best friend is dorky, I don't care.
Yeah, good for you. Elsa, Jill, thanks for your time today. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving us the chance.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1. To help you feel less alone. 2. Encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3. When you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
You can also visit learnfrompeoplewholived.com. That's a site we built for you. All the episodes are there. We've got a little bit more about why we've started our movement called Learn from People Who Lived It. And then you can click on the speaker tab and we can talk about me showing up to your space to help everybody lean into self-care and talk them through the idea of being a transitional character. Learnfrompeoplewholived.com. It's a real pretty site for real. Okay, that's it from us. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening or whatever part of the day it is and whatever part of the world you're in. We appreciate you listening. Please don't forget to rate and review our podcast kindly.